The ancient radio waves from Earth had been traveling through space for nearly 80 years when they finally reached the outer sensors of the Triloran listening post. Deep in the void between star systems, the massive station rotated slowly as it collected signals from 1,000 different worlds. Vorth pressed his three-fingered hand against the cool metal of his workstation and watched the data streams flow across his screen. As the chief analyst for the Triloran Hegemony's intelligence division, he had spent the last 20 years cataloging the communications of primitive species throughout this sector of the galaxy. Most worlds were boring, simple agricultural societies or early industrial civilizations that posed no threat to Triloran expansion. But this new signal was different. The electromagnetic emissions from the third planet of a yellow star showed remarkable complexity and volume. Vorth's mandibles clicked together in excitement as he realized what he had found. This species, these humans as they called themselves, had been broadcasting detailed information about their civilization for decades. "Nelth, come look at this," Vorth called to his research partner. The cultural anthropologist glided over, on her 6 legs, her large compound eyes reflecting the glow of the monitors. "What have you discovered?" Nelth asked, her voice carrying the musical tones typical of her species. "A complete historical archive," Vorth replied, his excitement growing. "These humans have been transmitting visual records of their major conflicts, technological developments, and social structures. We have everything we need to understand their capabilities." Nelth leaned closer to examine the data. The transmissions were organized into what appeared to be educational segments, each containing detailed visual documentation of human activities. Some showed massive military conflicts with thousands of warriors, others displayed their primitive, but functional technology. "Look at this sequence," Vorth pointed to a particular transmission. "It shows their most recent global conflict. Notice how they use chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Their vehicles run on combustion engines, and their aircraft are powered by simple jet propulsion." The two aliens watched in fascination as black and white images showed human soldiers fighting across various landscapes. The weapons were crude, but effective, and the tactics seemed straightforward. Most importantly, the technology appeared to be the pinnacle of human achievement. "They call this World War II, Nelth observed, translating the human language through their universal communication device. "It appears to be their most advanced military operation to date." Vorth nodded and switched to another set of transmissions. "But look at these older records. They're much more advanced." The screen now showed humans with energy weapons, faster-than-light spacecraft, and cities that floated in the sky. "Remarkable," Nelth breathed. "This species appears to have suffered a significant technological regression. These ancient records show capabilities far beyond what they demonstrate in their more recent conflicts." "Exactly my conclusion," Vorth agreed. At some point in their past, humans possessed technology that rivaled some of our own capabilities. But something happened, perhaps a global catastrophe or civil war, that reduced them to their current primitive state. The two scientists spent the next several hours reviewing the human transmissions. The pattern seemed clear. Ancient human records showed incredible technological achievements, while more recent documentation revealed a species struggling with basic chemistry and metallurgy. Their current population appears to be around 7 billion individuals, Nelth reported after analyzing the demographic data. They occupy a single planet with no significant space-based infrastructure. Their most advanced spacecraft barely reach their own moon. And their weapons technology, Vorth added, remains focused on chemical explosives and kinetic projectiles. Even their most sophisticated military equipment would be ineffective against our defensive systems. Word of their discovery quickly reached the highest levels of the Triloran hegemony. Commander Yelis, leader of the 4th Expansion Fleet, reviewed their findings with growing interest. The hegemony had been looking for new worlds to add to their empire, and this human planet appeared to be an ideal candidate. So you're telling me, Commander Yylus said during their briefing, that this species once possessed advanced technology but has since declined to a primitive state? That is correct, Commander, Vorth replied. Our analysis suggests they reached their technological peak thousands of years ago, then suffered some form of civilizational collapse. What we see now are the descendants of a once great empire, reduced to fighting with crude weapons on a single world. And their current military capabilities? Minimal, sir. Their most recent conflict documentation shows armies equipped with chemical-powered rifles and explosive devices. Their air forces use jet engines, and their naval vessels are powered by combustion systems, nothing that would pose a threat to our fleet. Commander Ylyus's 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Then, they represent an excellent opportunity for peaceful incorporation into the hegemony. A world of 7 billion workers, abundant natural resources, and no significant defensive capabilities. There is one thing, Commander, Nelth interjected. The humans appear to have unusual psychological characteristics. Their historical records show remarkable persistence in the face of overwhelming odds. They seem to prefer fighting to surrender, even when defeat is certain. Admirable but irrelevant, Commander Yylus dismissed. Primitive weapons and brave hearts are no match for modern military technology. Their fighting spirit might actually make them valuable as auxiliary forces once they're properly integrated into our society. Over the following weeks, Vorth and Nelth continued their analysis of human civilization. They cataloged human industrial capacity, population centers, and military installations. The picture that emerged confirmed their initial assessment. Humans were a declining species with limited technology, confined to a single world with no significant space defenses. I've identified their primary military installations, Vorth reported to the Fleet Command. They maintain several large bases, but none appear to be equipped with advanced weapon systems. Their most sophisticated facility seems to be something called NORAD, which appears to be a primitive early warning system built inside a mountain. The intelligence report made its way through the Triloran command structure, painting a picture of Earth as an easy conquest. A world rich in resources, populated by a species that had lost most of its technological edge, defended by primitive weapons that pose no threat to modern military forces. Commander Yylus began planning the incorporation operation. Based on the intelligence analysis, a single battle group would be more than sufficient to overwhelm human defenses and establish Triloran control. The humans would be given the opportunity to surrender peacefully, and if they refused, their primitive military could be quickly neutralized. The decision was made. Earth would be the next world to join the Triloran hegemony, whether its inhabitants wanted to or not. Deep in the research laboratories of the Triloran Intelligence Division, teams of specialists worked around the clock to decode every aspect of human civilization. The massive database of intercepted transmissions had grown to contain thousands of hours of what they believed to be historical documentation. Dr. Nelth adjusted the viewing angle on her monitor and called her assistant over. Rax, I need you to cross-reference these human conflict records with their technological timeline. The young researcher's antennae twitched with curiosity as he approached. What have you found, Doctor? Something very troubling about human psychological development, Nelth replied, highlighting several data files. Look at these battle records from their ancient period. The screen showed humans wielding glowing energy weapons, fighting aboard massive spacecraft, and commanding armies of mechanical warriors. Now compare that to their more recent conflicts, she continued, switching to different footage. The images now showed human soldiers carrying metal rifles, riding in tracked vehicles, and fighting with chemical explosives. The technological decline is even more severe than we initially thought, Rax observed. These ancient humans were clearly spacefaring warriors with energy-based weapons. The modern humans appear to have lost almost all of that knowledge. But notice their tactical thinking, Nelth pointed out. Even with primitive weapons, their strategic planning remains sophisticated. They use deception, coordinated attacks, and complex logistics. The intellectual capacity is still there, even if the technology isn't. Across the laboratory, Vorth was making his own disturbing discoveries. He had been analyzing what the humans called their documentary films and finding patterns that troubled him greatly. "Commander Yillis needs to see this immediately," he muttered, compiling his latest findings into a report. When the commander arrived, Vorth wasted no time in explaining his concerns. "Sir, I've been studying human military psychology through their historical records, and I believe we may have underestimated their potential for resistance." "Explain!" Commander Yillis demanded. "Their ancient records show a species that never surrenders, regardless of the odds against them. In one documented battle, a small group of humans held off an army many times their size for days, fighting to the last individual. In another record, humans actually preferred to destroy their own settlements rather than let enemies occupy them." Vorth switched to another file. "This record shows humans continuing to fight even after their planet was invaded by technologically superior forces. They used guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and suicide attacks to resist occupation." "But those are ancient records, Commander," Yillis pointed out. "You said yourself that modern humans are more primitive. Perhaps they've lost their warrior instincts along with their technology." "That's what concerns me, sir," Vorth replied. "According to their more recent historical documents, they haven't lost those instincts at all. Even with primitive weapons, they continue to show the same willingness to fight hopeless battles." Dr. Nelth joined the conversation with her own findings. "I've been analyzing their cultural development, and there's something very strange about their society. They appear to deliberately preserve and celebrate stories about impossible victories and last stands." "What do you mean?" the commander asked. "They have countless records of small groups defeating much larger forces through cunning, determination, or pure luck. These stories are told repeatedly across their culture, almost like religious texts. It's as if they're conditioning their entire species to believe that any battle can be won if they just refuse to give up." Vorth nodded grimly. "And their recent conflicts support this. Even when facing overwhelming odds, human forces rarely surrender. They fight until they're completely destroyed or until they somehow achieve victory. But with our technological advantage," Commander Yillis argued, "their determination is irrelevant. What can primitive weapons do against our shields and armor?" "That's another concern, sir," Vorth said, pulling up more data. "Their historical records show humans have a particular talent for rapidly adapting their technology during wartime. In their most recent global conflict, they went from simple propeller aircraft to jet engines in just a few years. Their weapons development accelerated dramatically under pressure. They also show remarkable creativity in weapon design," Nelth added. "They've invented thousands of different ways to kill each other, from simple spears to complex chemical weapons. They seem to treat warfare as a form of engineering problem that can always be solved with enough innovation." Commander Yillis studied the data with growing unease. "Are you suggesting that these primitive humans could pose a threat to our fleet?" "Not with their current technology, no," Vorth replied carefully. "But their psychological profile suggests they won't surrender easily, and their history indicates they're capable of rapid technological advancement when threatened. The incorporation process may take longer and cost more than we initially estimated." "How much longer?" the commander asked. "Based on their resistance patterns, we should expect to spend several months establishing complete control. We may need to occupy their entire planet rather than just forcing their government to surrender, and we should prepare for continued resistance even after official defeat." Dr. Nelth added her own concerns. "There's also the question of what triggered their technological decline. If they once possessed advanced weapons and spacecraft, what caused them to regress to chemical explosives and metal projectiles? If we could identify the cause, we might better understand their current capabilities." "Our analysis suggests internal conflict," Vorth replied. "Many of their ancient records show humans fighting other humans with advanced weapons. It appears they may have destroyed much of their own civilization in civil wars. That actually supports our assessment, Commander Yillis noted. A species that destroys its own advanced technology is unlikely to pose a serious threat to us. Perhaps, sir, Vorth agreed reluctantly. But it also shows they're willing to use extremely destructive weapons against their own kind. We should consider what they might be willing to do to alien invaders. The meeting ended with a revised timeline for the Earth operation. Instead of the quick, clean incorporation originally planned, the fleet would prepare for an extended occupation. Additional ships would be allocated to patrol duties, and they would establish permanent bases on the planet to maintain control. But even these precautions were based on their fundamental misunderstanding of human capabilities. The aliens continued to view the intercepted transmissions as genuine historical records, never considering that much of what they were analyzing came from human imagination rather than human history. As the Triloran fleet prepared for departure, their intelligence files painted a picture of Earth as a world populated by the declining descendants of a once great civilization. The humans were expected to fight bravely but futilely with their primitive weapons before eventually accepting their new place in the Triloran hegemony. It would prove to be the most costly intelligence failure in Triloran history. The first indication that something was wrong came when the Triloran fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the human solar system. Instead of the primitive radio chatter they expected, their sensors immediately detected highly sophisticated scanning beams sweeping across their ships. Commander Yillis stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the sensor displays with growing confusion. "Communications officer, are you certain these signals are coming from the human planet?" "Yes, sir," the officer replied, his voice uncertain. "But the signal patterns are far more advanced than our intelligence report suggested. They're using quantum encryption and frequency hopping techniques that we've only seen from species with centuries of spaceflight experience. Perhaps they've recovered some of their ancient technology," Yillis suggested, though doubt was creeping into his voice. "Proceed with the approach as planned." What the Triloran commander didn't know was that humanity had been aware of their presence for 3 months. Long-range sensors hidden throughout the outer solar system had detected the alien scout ships that Vorth thought had gone unnoticed. Every major government on Earth had been quietly preparing for this moment. On Luna Base, humanity's primary military command center built deep inside the moon, Captain Roy checked the tactical display one final time. The alien fleet consisted of 12 ships, exactly as predicted by Earth's intelligence services. They were approaching in a standard patrol formation, clearly expecting minimal resistance. "All stations report ready," announced Lieutenant Sam from the communications console. "Earth Defense Fleet is in position and awaiting orders." Roy nodded grimly. The months of preparation were about to pay off. "Signal Admiral Beth on the flagship. Tell her the party is about to begin." 300,000 kilometers away, Admiral Beth stood on the bridge of the EDF Defiant, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. Unlike the primitive chemical rockets the aliens expected, her ship was powered by a fusion drive and armed with weapons that existed nowhere in their intercepted entertainment transmissions. "Admiral, we're receiving the final authorization codes from Earth Command," reported her tactical officer. "All defense platforms are online, and the stealth fleet is in position." Beth smiled coldly. The Triloran fleet was flying directly into a trap that had been years in the making. "Begin the demonstration. Target their lead scout with a single railgun round. I want them to know we're here." The hypervelocity projectile streaked across space at a significant fraction of light speed, striking the Triloran scout ship's shields with devastating effect. The alien vessel's defensive systems, designed to deflect primitive chemical explosives, simply couldn't handle the kinetic energy of a magnetically accelerated tungsten rod. On the Triloran flagship, alarms blared as the scout ship exploded in A ball of superheated plasma. "Report!" Commander Yelis shouted over the noise. "Sir, the humans just destroyed Scout 7 with a single projectile," his tactical officer announced in disbelief. "The impact energy readings are off our scales. That wasn't a chemical explosive or metal projectile. It was moving at nearly 10% light speed." "Impossible," Yelis snarled. "Our intelligence clearly shows they use primitive kinetic weapons. How could they accelerate a projectile to those velocities?" His answer came in the form of a human transmission broadcast across all Triloran communication frequencies. The image showed a middle-aged human woman in a military uniform speaking with calm authority. "This is Admiral Beth of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered human space without permission and destroyed one of our monitoring satellites. You have 10 minutes to reverse course and leave our system, or we will consider your presence an act of war." Commander Yelis stared at the transmission in shock. "They destroyed one of our ships and they're threatening us? With what? Where are their vessels? Our sensors show nothing but empty space." That question was answered moments later when the seemingly empty space around the Triloran fleet suddenly filled with human warships. Stealth technology, far beyond anything the aliens had imagined, allowed dozens of vessels to materialize as if from nowhere. "Sir." The tactical officer's voice was barely a whisper. "We're completely surrounded. Their ships are using some form of cloaking technology. We never saw them coming." But the surprises weren't over. As the Triloran ships scrambled to form a defensive formation, energy beams lanced out from human defense platforms scattered throughout the solar system. These weren't the primitive laser weapons the aliens might have expected, but coherent particle beams that sliced through Triloran, armor like paper. "Shields failing on ships 4, 7, and 9, came the panicked reports from across the fleet. "Sir, their weapons are completely bypassing our defensive systems. Our shields aren't even slowing them down." Captain Roy watched the battle unfold from Luna Base with grim satisfaction. The aliens had made the fatal mistake of believing their own intelligence reports. While they expected to face humans armed with chemical explosives and metal bullets, they instead found themselves fighting antimatter warheads and plasma cannons. "Phase 2, Roy ordered. "Launch the interceptors." From hidden bases across the solar system, thousands of small craft streaked toward the alien fleet. These weren't the primitive aircraft the Trilorans expected, but advanced fighter craft equipped with miniaturized fusion drives and quantum computers. Commander Yelis watched in horror as his battle group disintegrated around him. 3 more ships had been completely destroyed, and the rest were taking heavy damage from weapons that shouldn't exist. The humans weren't using primitive technology at all. If anything, their weapons were more advanced than Triloran military equipment. "Sir, we need to retreat," his tactical officer urged. "We can't fight this. Our intelligence was completely wrong." "All ships, emergency withdrawal," Yelis ordered, his pride destroyed along with half his fleet. "Jump to hyperspace immediately." But even their escape was harried by human forces. Long-range missiles followed the fleeing ships, detonating around them as they desperately tried to reach the minimum safe distance for faster-than-light travel. Only 3 Triloran ships managed to escape the system. 9 others had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris and plasma. The mighty 4th Expansion Fleet, which had expected to easily overwhelm a primitive human civilization, had been shattered in less than 2 hours. As the surviving alien ships fled into hyperspace, Admiral Beth allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The plan had worked perfectly. Decades of careful preparation, combined with deliberate misinformation, had given humanity every advantage in the encounter. "Send a message to Earth Command," she ordered. "Tell them the field test was a complete success. Our new weapons performed exactly as designed, and the enemy fell for our deception completely. The battle was over, but both sides knew this was just the beginning. The Triloran hegemony would want answers about how their intelligence had been so catastrophically wrong, and humanity would need to prepare for the larger conflict that was sure to follow. But for now, Earth remained free, and the aliens had learned a hard lesson about the dangers of underestimating humanity. The species they thought was primitive and declining had just demonstrated technological superiority that bordered on the impossible. The real question was what would happen when they discovered the truth about human preparations. The emergency session of the Triloran High Council convened within hours of receiving the battle reports from the surviving ships of the 4th Expansion Fleet. General Crix, Supreme Military Commander of the Hegemony, stood before a semicircle of the most powerful beings in their civilization, trying to explain how a primitive human civilization had just destroyed 3/4 of an entire battle group. "The initial reports must be wrong," declared Counselor Max, her crystalline form pulsing with agitation. "Our intelligence clearly showed these humans using chemical weapons and metal projectiles. How could they possibly destroy our ships?" "I've reviewed the sensor data personally," General Crix replied, his voice heavy with defeat. "The humans used weapons technology that exceeds our own capabilities in several key areas. Magnetic acceleration systems that achieve velocities we thought impossible, particle beam weapons with focusing precision beyond our understanding, and stealth technology that rendered their entire fleet invisible to our sensors." Counselor Theo, eldest of the council, raised one of his 4 arms for attention. "General, are you suggesting that our intelligence division completely failed to detect advanced human technology?" "I'm suggesting something far worse," Crix answered grimly. "I believe the humans deliberately misled us about their capabilities. This wasn't an intelligence failure. This was a trap." The council chamber fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. If the humans had been deliberately broadcasting false information about their technology, it meant they had been planning for alien contact for decades. "Summon Vorth and his research team immediately," Counselor Mex ordered. "We need answers." When Vorth arrived at the council chambers, he looked like he had aged years in the past few days. His research team had been working non-stop to reanalyze the human transmissions, and what they were discovering challenged everything they thought they knew about human civilization. "Honored counselors," Vorth began, his voice shaking slightly, "I must report that our initial analysis of human capabilities appears to have been fundamentally flawed." "How flawed?" General Crix demanded. "We may have confused human entertainment, media with actual historical records," Vorth admitted, his mandibles clicking nervously. "What we interpreted as documentary evidence of human conflicts and technology may have been fictional stories created for amusement." The silence that followed was deafening. Counselor Theo finally spoke, his voice dangerously quiet. "Are you telling us that we launched a military operation based on human fiction?" "It appears so, sir," Vorth replied miserably. "We intercepted thousands of hours of what we believed were historical documentaries. But upon closer analysis, many of these transmissions contain impossible events, inconsistent timelines, and technology that clearly cannot exist." Dr. Nelth, who had accompanied Vorth to the hearing, stepped forward with additional information. "Counselors, we've also discovered that the humans have been broadcasting multiple versions of the same historical events, with significant variations in details and outcomes. This suggests that many of these transmissions were created for entertainment rather than education." "Show us," General Crix ordered. The main display activated, showing side-by-side comparisons of human transmissions. One showed human soldiers fighting with chemical weapons and metal projectiles, exactly as the Triloran intelligence had reported. The other showed the same historical period, but with humans using energy weapons and advanced technology. "These transmissions claim to depict the same war," Nelth explained, "but with completely different technology levels. We now believe the more primitive versions were attempts at historical accuracy, while the advanced versions were speculative fiction." "But that doesn't explain how they defeated our fleet," Counselor Mex pointed out. "Even if our intelligence was wrong, how did they develop such advanced weapons?" Vorth activated another display, showing the results of their latest analysis. Counselors, we believe the humans have been deliberately broadcasting misleading information for decades. While their entertainment media showed primitive technology, they were actually developing far more advanced weapons in secret. The pattern is clear once you know what to look for, Nelth added. Their fictional stories consistently show humans defeating technologically superior enemies through ingenuity and determination. We interpreted these as historical records of past victories, but they may actually have been preparation for future conflicts. General Crix studied the data with growing alarm. Are you saying they've been planning for this encounter? Evidence suggests they detected our scout ships months ago, Vorth replied. Their response was too coordinated, too prepared. They knew exactly where our ships would be and what weapons would be most effective against our defenses. The revelation hit the Council like a physical blow. Not only had they been deceived about human capabilities, but the humans had turned their own intelligence-gathering efforts against them. What else have we missed? Counselor Theo asked quietly. Their industrial capacity is far greater than we estimated, Nelth reported. We focused on their primitive transportation and manufacturing systems but missed signs of advanced automated production. They may be capable of building warships at a rate that exceeds our own. Their military organization is also more sophisticated than we realized, Vorth added. What we interpreted as separate national armies appears to be a coordinated global defense system. They responded to our attack as a unified species, not as competing tribal groups. The implications were staggering. Instead of finding a primitive civilization ripe for conquest, the Triloran hegemony had encountered a technologically advanced species that had been preparing for alien contact for decades. What are our options? General Crix asked the Council. Military. Escalation would be extremely risky, Counselor Mex replied after consulting with her advisors. If they defeated a full battle group with such ease, a larger fleet might not fare any better. Diplomatic contact? Suggested Counselor Theo. That may no longer be possible, General Crix answered grimly. We attacked them without provocation. They have no reason to trust us. As if summoned by their discussion, an alert chimed through the chamber. A new transmission was being received from the human solar system. The display activated to show a human male in formal civilian attire, standing in what appeared to be a government building. Behind him, symbols of various human nations were visible. I am Ambassador Tom, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Government, the human began, his voice calm but firm. We are aware that survivors from your attack fleet have returned to your territory. We want to make our position clear. The human paused, looking directly into the camera with unsettling intensity. We have no interest in conquering your worlds or expanding into your territory, but we will not tolerate further attacks on our system or our people. To demonstrate our capabilities, Ambassador Tom continued, we will now provide a practical demonstration of our current weapons technology. The transmission switched to external cameras showing a large asteroid in the outer reaches of the human solar system. Without warning, the asteroid simply vanished in a flash of brilliant light, completely vaporized by some unseen weapon. That demonstration used approximately 1% of our current military capacity, the ambassador continued as the camera returned to him. We hope this clarifies any remaining questions about human defensive capabilities. We offer one opportunity for peaceful resolution, the human concluded. Withdraw all forces from our borders, cease all intelligence-gathering activities in our system, and we will consider this matter closed. Any further hostile action will be met with appropriate response. The transmission ended, leaving the Triloran Council in stunned silence. The humans had not only defeated their fleet, but had demonstrated weapons capable of completely destroying large asteroids. The species they had intended to conquer was offering them terms for surrender. The price of misreading human history was becoming clear. The Triloran hegemony faced a choice between humiliating withdrawal or potentially catastrophic escalation against an enemy they had drastically underestimated. The emergency meeting had stretched through the night cycle on the Triloran homeworld. In a secure conference room deep beneath the capital city, the surviving members of the High Council debated the most difficult decision in their civilizations: history. General Crix spread the latest intelligence reports across the holographic display, each one painting a more dire picture than the last. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected human ships moving beyond their solar system. They're not just defending anymore, they're exploring. Counselor Mex examined the data with her compound eyes, her crystalline form dimming with concern. How many ships? At least 40 vessels, possibly more, Crix replied. They're using the same stealth technology that allowed them to ambush our fleet. We only detect them when they choose to reveal themselves. Counselor Theo, despite his advanced age, leaned forward with sharp attention. What are their apparent objectives? Unknown, but they're conducting detailed scans of our outer colonies, Crix answered grimly. The same type of reconnaissance we performed on their system, but far more sophisticated. They're learning everything about our defensive capabilities, industrial capacity, and population centers. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The hunters had become the hunted. Vorth, who had spent the past weeks frantically reanalyzing every piece of human intelligence, cleared his throat nervously. Counselors, I've made another disturbing discovery about human strategic thinking. More. Bad news? Counselor Mex asked wearily. I've been studying their entertainment transmissions more carefully, focusing on the stories that show humans interacting with alien species, Vorth explained. There's a consistent pattern in their fictional scenarios. He activated a new display showing compilation data from hundreds of human stories. In 93% of their fictional encounters with aliens, the humans eventually achieve victory through superior strategy, technology, or simple determination. But more importantly, in 78% of these stories, the humans end up exploring or controlling alien territory. Fiction, Counselor Theo dismissed. Not evidence of actual intentions. Perhaps, sir, Vorth replied carefully. But remember that we initially dismissed their advanced weapons as fiction too. These stories may represent their strategic planning as much as their entertainment. Dr. Nelth added her own findings to the grim assessment. I've also discovered something troubling about their historical patterns. When humans encounter a new threat, they don't just defend against it. They study it, adapt to it, and then develop methods to defeat similar threats in the future. What do you mean? General Crix asked. Their own historical records show this pattern repeatedly, Nelth explained. When faced with new weapons, they develop countermeasures. When faced with new tactics, they create better strategies. They don't just survive threats, they learn from them and become stronger. The implications hung heavy in the air. The Triloran attack hadn't just failed to conquer humanity, it had taught them about alien military technology and revealed the existence of other spacefaring civilizations. Sir, an aide whispered to General Crix, we're receiving another transmission from the human system. The main display activated to show the same human ambassador who had delivered their ultimatum days earlier. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood representatives of what appeared to be different human ethnicities and cultures, all wearing the same military insignia. I am Ambassador Tom, speaking again for the United Earth Government, the human began. We have noted the movement of your remaining military assets toward our borders, and we want to address this directly. The ambassador's expression remained calm, but his words carried an unmistakable threat. We have completed our analysis of your attack fleet's technology and tactical doctrine. We have also conducted preliminary reconnaissance of your territorial holdings and defensive positions. General Crix felt his blood chill. The humans weren't just defending, they were preparing for offensive operations. We want to make our position absolutely clear, the ambassador continued. We have no desire for conquest or expansion into your territory. However, we will not allow the threat of future attacks to hang over our world. Therefore, we propose the following terms. The human said, and Crix realized they were being offered conditions for surrender. All Triloran military assets will withdraw to a distance of no less than 50 light-years from our solar system. All intelligence-gathering activities directed at human space will cease immediately, and most importantly, Earth and human colonies will be designated as off-limits to all Triloran activities. In return, the ambassador added, we will not pursue military action against your homeworld or colonies. We will also share certain medical and agricultural technologies that we believe will benefit your civilian population. The transmission paused, allowing the weight of the offer to sink in. You have 72 hours to respond. After that time, we will consider silence to be rejection of our terms and will act accordingly. The transmission ended, leaving the Triloran leadership in stunned silence. They were being offered terms by a species they had intended to conquer. They're dictating surrender terms to us, Counselor Mech said quietly. To the Triloran hegemony. The alternative appears to be war with a species that just demonstrated technological superiority, General Crix replied. A war we might not survive. Counselor Theo, who had lived through the expansion of the Triloran Empire from a single world to hundreds of systems, spoke with the weight of centuries. In all our history, we have never encountered a species that turned our own intelligence operations against us so completely. What's worse, Vorth added miserably, we still don't understand how they did it. The level of planning required to create a deception spanning decades while simultaneously developing advanced weapons in secret suggests organizational capabilities we never detected. Over the next day, reports continued to arrive from across Triloran space. Human ships had been detected near 7 different colony systems, always maintaining a respectful distance, but clearly demonstrating their presence. The message was unmistakable. Humanity now possessed the capability to strike anywhere in Triloran territory. They're showing us they can reach our worlds, General Crix reported to an emergency session of the remaining council members. But they're not attacking. They're giving us time to make the right decision. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. Dr. Nelth had been analyzing the human entertainment broadcasts one more time when she made a startling discovery. Counselors, she announced breathlessly as she burst into the session, I've found evidence that the humans have been preparing for alien contact since the 1940s by their calendar. Impossible, Counselor Mex replied. That's over 80 years ago. Look at this, Nelth said, activating her portable display. I found references in their early entertainment media to something called Project Blue Book and SETI. Initially, I dismissed these as more fiction, but cross-referencing with their government documents suggests these were real programs. The display showed fragments of human transmissions dating back decades, references to unidentified flying objects, government investigations, and scientific programs designed to detect alien communications. They've been watching for us, Nelth continued, her voice filled with awe and fear. Their entire entertainment industry was part of a massive psychological preparation program. They've been conditioning their population to expect alien contact and to believe that humans can defeat any alien threat. The stories weren't just fiction, Vorth added, understanding flooding his voice. They were training scenarios. They've been preparing their entire civilization for this moment. General Crix stared at the data in disbelief. You're saying they've been ready for us for nearly a century? More than ready, Nelth replied. They've been studying every possible scenario for alien contact. They know our weaknesses better than we know them ourselves because they've been planning for this encounter since before our civilization even discovered faster-than-light travel. The final blow came when President Lee of the United Earth Government appeared on screens across Triloran space, speaking directly to their population. Somehow the humans had gained access to their communication networks. Citizens of the Triloran hegemony, the human leader began, speaking in perfectly translated Triloran language. "We want you to know that humanity bears no ill will toward your people. Our conflict is with your government's decision to attack our world without provocation." The president's words were carefully chosen to drive a wedge between the Triloran leadership and their population. "We have no interest in conquest or domination. We seek only to ensure that no future attacks are launched against human worlds. We believe peaceful coexistence is possible, but only if your leaders choose wisdom over aggression. We have prepared defensive measures that will protect our worlds from any future attacks," President Lee continued. "But we would prefer to use our advanced technology to benefit both our species. We offer medical treatments that could extend Triloran lifespans, agricultural techniques that could end hunger on your worlds, and energy systems that could power your civilization for millennia." The transmission ended with a simple message. "Choose peace, and both our species will prosper. Choose war, and only one will survive." Within hours, protests began on Triloran worlds. The population, learning for the first time that their government had launched an unprovoked attack on another species, demanded answers. The humans had successfully turned Triloran public opinion against their own leadership. The final council session was brief. Faced with military defeat, technological inferiority, and domestic unrest, the Triloran hegemony had no choice but to accept human terms. "Send our response," Counselor Theo ordered wearily. "We accept their conditions." General Crix composed the surrender message with hands that shook slightly from exhaustion and defeat. "To the United Earth Government, the Triloran hegemony formally accepts your terms for peaceful resolution. All military assets will be withdrawn from human space immediately. All intelligence operations will cease. We recognize human territorial sovereignty and request peaceful relations." The response came within hours. Ambassador Tom appeared again, but this time his expression was more conciliatory. "We accept your agreement," the human said. "As promised, we will share beneficial technologies with your civilian population. We also propose the establishment of formal diplomatic relations and the creation of neutral trading posts where our species can interact safely. However," the ambassador added, his tone becoming stern, "be aware that Earth has redesignated the Triloran hegemony from unknown contact to monitored entity. Any future aggressive actions will be met with immediate and overwhelming response." The price of misreading human history was complete. The Triloran hegemony, once a proud, expanding empire, had been reduced to a monitored junior partner in galactic affairs. They had lost a fleet, their reputation, and their freedom of action, all because they confused human entertainment with human history. But perhaps most costly of all, they had awakened a sleeping giant. Humanity now knew they weren't alone in the galaxy, and they had learned that not all alien species came in peace. The defensive measures developed for the Triloran attack would be improved and expanded. Other alien civilizations would eventually discover what the Trilorans had learned too late. Humanity was no longer confined to a single world, and they would never again be caught unprepared. The humans had won more than a single battle. They had announced their presence to the galaxy as a force to be respected and feared, and it had all started because the Trilorans made the fatal mistake of believing that human movies were historical documentaries.